What's happening, everybody? Got another episode of Facemask Fantasy, and we are through 10 weeks of the NFL season. We're at the point now where waiver wires are pretty thin. We can go over some options today for anybody who's looking for uh, a streaming piece for this week, depending on what options you have or what injuries you're currently dealing with. News and notes around the league. Can, of course, go over those. And then, of course, any personal situations that you may have, whether it's a trade that you're thinking about making, um, what your situation is as the playoff race really officially begins. We're in the final 4 weeks of the regular season for most leagues. It might be 5 weeks for other leagues for play until week 18. Hopefully, that's not your league. It should be 4 weeks of the regular season for most competitive leagues. So the playoff race is this is pretty much it. It's do or die time. Trade deadlines are probably either coming up this week or next week. I think a lot of folks have them next week. So that you have a couple weeks in the regular season left before the playoffs, before the trade deadline, to kind of get yourself situated and sorted going into the postseason. So we can go through those different scenarios if you have them. And we'll go from there. Just going through some of the most recent pieces of news across the NFL. Big news today coming from Buffalo. The Bills have fired their offensive coordinator. I mean, the Bills have been, for the most part, fine from a total offense perspective this year. They're just not winning games. So, the fantasy numbers that the Bills are putting up is not the issue. So I don't think that really pertains too much to fantasy managers. Stephon Diggs has been kind of quiet by his lofty standards the past couple of weeks, especially last night. I think he had like 3 catches for 34 yards on Monday night or something to that effect. Really low totals. Had similar catch and yardage totals the previous week. He caught a touchdown, though, so it was salvaged. And, of course, Allen has been a bit of a turnover monster. That hasn't affected his fantasy outputs, though. He's still the number one. He's still QB1 in pretty much every scoring system for fantasy purposes. So anybody who has Josh Allen, you're living with the turnovers, but the Bills certainly are feeling it right now from an NFL perspective. He's turning the ball over at a ridiculous rate, but he comes through with big offensive production. So from a fantasy perspective, we don't really care. We're not worried about the turnovers. But it is something to monitor overall. Maybe more specifically, if you have Josh Allen in Dynasty, there's no panic button to be hit right now. There's nothing to be concerned about from that perspective. But it is a noteworthy development going on right now. The Bills seem to be in a bit of free fall relative to the expectations that they had coming into the season. Now the offensive coordinator gets fired. The quarterback is turning the ball over. The star wide receiver is apparently disgruntled. He hasn't said anything recently, although his brother did last night on social media. All is not well up in Western New York. Again, from a fantasy perspective, especially redraft right now, we don't care all that much. This doesn't affect us too much. Josh Allen is still going to be putting up QB1 overall, or at least QB1 on, each week. consistently for the rest of the season. That's something that you can expect from him with top 5 performances, still probably about half of the time, which is an incredible rate, an incredible pace. But if you have Allen in Dynasty, this is noteworthy. Again, I'm not looking to sell high with Josh Allen in Dynasty. I'm not hitting that panic button. It's way too early to even consider that, especially if you've got a contender. And if you've got if in redraft, you're not thinking about this at all, right? This is not a concern. This is a little bit more of a storyline for Dynasty folks who have Allen. Between the turnover worthy plays and the amount of hits that he takes, I'm just curious to see how long Josh Allen lasts. I hope it's for another 10 years, but it's conceivable that it's not, going to be that long for Josh Allen, at least from a perspective of how long we can expect elite play from him. Leads the league in turnovers since he entered the NFL in 2018 with 93 combined fumbles and interceptions. So that's about 15 combined turnovers a season. Not great. Um, that's not like a historically awful number for any one season, 15 turnovers, but to consistently do it every single year or to average that number, that is high. And when you factor in how frequently Allen takes big hits, um, on a scale of 1 to 10 in Dynasty, again, I'm just kind of focusing on Dynasty right now. On a scale of 1 to 10, how concerned are you about Josh Allen? It's like a 2. It's a 2 or 3. You're not worried about him necessarily, but I would say it's officially on the roadmap. Like, what's going on with Josh Allen? Will he ever cut the turnovers down? Something to put on the radar. Not for this season, certainly not if you're a contender, but um, something to maybe put in the back of your head for, I don't know, the next couple of seasons or so. Because in a couple seasons from now, you can still ask for top dollar for Josh Allen if you chose to go that route. Uh, Another New York team making changes. This one makes no sense to me. Michael Carter's been released by the Jets. Uh, the Jets are, head coach Robert Saleh alluded to some personnel changes after they lost on Sunday Night Football against the Raiders. I didn't think that would mean cutting the third string running back on an offense with a backup quarterback not playing super well and an offensive line playing even worse. I mean, I guess maybe this means they want Izzy Abanikanda to step into a larger role. Maybe they feel like Abanikanda has more to offer, has a slightly higher ceiling than Michael Carter does for this offense. But I mean, how much work is Izzy Abanikanda getting when you've got a healthy Brees Hall plus, the ghost of Dalvin Cook in your backfield? Like, oh, yeah, you're really shaking things up by cutting the third string running back. That'll surely solve all of your blocking problems and the fact that your backup quarterback stinks. So nobody in New York from a football perspective is having fun right now. The Giants are like a relegation franchise. The Jets are just puttering along at, it's not their defense, it's their team as a whole. They're just puddling along in mediocrity. The defense is spectacular. Zach Wilson is terrible. Um, and then the Bills look like they are. I don't think that you can lump them into the conversation of the conference's elite. It's the Chiefs, it's the Ravens, maybe it's the Bengals, it's the Dolphins. and then maybe the Bills. I mean, you might be able to put the Browns up there depending on how you feel about Cleveland. Their defense is also spectacular. I mean, Buffalo is they're falling off right now. They are currently in like a they're in the second tier of AFC teams. They're not in the first tier, the way that people would have ranked these teams going into the season. They're a tier below everybody right now. So bad times for football fans across the state of New York. And then, of course, we'll see where Michael Carter eventually lands. You figure he'll end up on a practice squad somewhere. Um, yeah, that one didn't really make any sense to me. Bengals Ravens on Thursday night for Week 11. If you grabbed Keaton Mitchell, nicely done. I mean, this dude, talk about explosive. This guy needs to get more involved as soon as Thursday. And this is a massive game for both teams, both the Ravens and the Bengals. This is a huge game for both teams. Uh, if you're the Ravens, you got to get Keaton Mitchell more involved. So if you picked him up, nicely done. It's not out of the realm of possibility that he is he is an RB2 flex option for you this week. Is Keaton Mitchell. You know, he got in against the Seahawks in week 9 for mop-up duty, turned 9 carries into 138, yards, and then followed it up with, he only got 3 carries, turned them into 34 yards and a touchdown, caught one ball, turned it into a 32-yard gain. I mean, this dude needs more than 4 touches. I think that's, he got involved earlier on in a huge pivotal matchup against the Cleveland Browns for the Ravens. This wasn't just mop-up duty for Keaton Mitchell. He was mixing into the rotation earlier than he did against Seattle. And look what he did. Turned 4 touches into 66 total yards of offense. Dude's electric. So we'll keep an eye on practice reports and injury reports for that game, of course. They already start coming out. They started coming out yesterday. Of course, Monday practices for the Thursday night game are always nothing more than a walkthrough. But let's keep an eye on the backfield for Baltimore. And we always have to remember, on short weeks, teams are more likely to rotate in their complementary running backs to help preserve the starter. Generally speaking, the starter, if they're, if it's not a set and forget backfield with like somebody who, like a Christian McCaffrey, unless that's the case, or like a Derrick Henry, a lot of times the starter will get as much run as he can handle on Sunday. And then on Thursday, it's like then the backups rotate in more. So you would figure Keaton Mitchell sees, God, it should be more than 4 touches. I would think he needs. I would think he needs 10. You got to give this. You got to give this kid the ball 10 times. So if he's still out there on waivers, maybe he hasn't been picked up yet. I would go ahead and put that claim in, whether you need running back help or not. Because if you don't need running back help today, you'll probably need it tomorrow. You'll need, like, and what I mean by that is within the coming weeks. Everybody needs running back help every day of the season. You could always use more running back help because you just don't want to deal with the volatility of the position. So put a claim in for Keaton Mitchell. Certainly if you're hurting with running back help. And honestly, even if you're not and you have an open roster spot, if he's still out there, put that claim in. I wasn't ready to declare him. I did a video about him last week. I wasn't ready to declare him a league winner, but the upside is through the roof with Keaton Mitchell if anything happens to Gus Edwards or Justice Hill. And he's forcing his way into getting more work, even with those two guys healthy and involved. In that same game, it sounds like T. Higgins is unlikely to play. The short week is going to be too quick of a turnaround for him. Disappointing season for T. Higgins continues. Um, yeah, what we all expected. We drafted T. Higgins to be a low end wide receiver one, high end wide receiver two. That has not been the case this year. It's been a season, mirrored in injuries and poor performances from T. Higgins, underwhelming performances when he has been on the field, missed multiple games. This will be his third game missed due to injury. If he can't suit up against Baltimore, through the first 11 weeks of the season, Cincinnati has had their bye week. So through their first 10 games, including this game on Thursday against the Ravens, Higgins will have missed 3 of those games. He got blanked in 1. And then 3 games where he had 2 catches for 21 yards or less. It has been a bad year for T. Higgins. If he wants to get paid a fat contract, he's losing money by the day this year. He really needs to have a strong second half of the season and postseason for him to see those dollar signs bounce back in his favor. It's not been a good year for T. Higgins. So, again, if you're looking to stream wide receivers, Trenton Irwin played, I think, maybe not every snap on offense for the Bengals, but close to it. Caught a touchdown, caught a 32-yard touchdown. Trenton Irwin did early in the game. Played 81% of the snaps. I thought it was higher than that. Only 4 targets, 2 catches, but 54 yards and a touchdown. Tough matchup on the road against Baltimore, but T. Higgins is going to miss. He remains in the mix as like a boring-ish wide receiver 3. And Tyler Boyd is a wide receiver 2. All right, let me run through some of these questions, and then I can talk about some potential targets on the waiver wire that might be available in your league. If you're looking for something specific to plug in some gaps or some holes in your lineup this week, try to cover some names that hopefully take care of business for you from an availability perspective on waivers if you need to dip into the waiver wire. But let's get to some questions first. Crumbly Ads, what's going on, man? What's going on, Alex? Good to see everybody. What's going on, Xavier? Good to see you, man. This is a roster question. Nah, not really. I mean, you've got an elite quarterback. You've got a couple of good options, including Taylor. Well, you're going to need a running back replacement because Taylor's on bye this week. Jones has had a frustrating season, but part of that is because of the injury. I don't think performance has necessarily been an issue for Aaron Jones. They just don't, when he is out there, they don't give him the ball. They really, they utilize A.J. Dillon a ton, even though Aaron Jones is, even at 28, He's way more talented than AJ Dillon. Um, you kind of just have to roll with him. Receivers are good. You have Kelsey, so that's all good. I mean, I think you're fine for the most part. It's a good roster, especially considering 20 teams. Um, and if you've scored a lot of points, then it's kind of like you kind of just need to trust the fortunes of the team that you've built from here on out. I mean, top 3 in scoring, that means you built a good roster, you built a good team. Now you kind of just got to let the results play out for themselves. Um, I think Kirk will bounce back fine. The Jags don't have to face a defense like San Francisco for a few weeks, and I say that because they do have to play Cleveland, I think, in week 14. So they catch a little bit of a break for a couple of weeks. So you hope that he can turn it around. DJ Moore, you're hoping Justin Fields comes back this week and gives him a boost. I mean, I think you're fine. I think you're okay. Just kind of got to let this, you got to kind of got to let the results just play themselves out. And speaking of the Jaguars, yeah, this is something that we can touch on, Xavier. I have been a big Trevor Lawrence guy. And again, for those who are new or, whether you've been around the block, I do get to the member questions first. That is a perk of being a member. You do get to jump the line and get questions answered first, and then I will move back up to the top. As far as Lawrence, man, he's been probably the disappointment at quarterback this year. Right? I mean, well, maybe Fields, but I mean, Fields has been injured. At least we can just put him on IR and find a replacement. Lawrence has been out there and just not playing well. There are occasions where it's not Lawrence's fault, and the receivers are dropping passes. Jacksonville's drop rate has been pretty high compared to other teams this season. But Lawrence isn't playing well himself in certain spots, and it's frustrating. It's leading to a lack of production relative to expectations. And it bottomed out for him this past week against San Francisco. He's got Tennessee, Houston, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Baltimore, Tampa, and Carolina for the rest of his schedule. That's a lot of tough spots. Tennessee, that should be a beatable secondary for him. On the road against Houston, I mean, that's a tough spot. Home against Cincinnati, that's a middle of the pack spot. We'll see if the Bengals have Trey Hendrickson back healthy for that game. He's currently looking unlikely to play for Thursday night. On the road against Cleveland, I don't know you want to start Trevor Lawrence in that game. At home against Baltimore, this is the playoffs now. I don't know if you want to start Trevor Lawrence for that game. On the road in Tampa, week 16, if you get to, the semifinals of your league, you probably have to fire Lawrence up in that matchup. But we're talking 6 weeks from now. I think if Fields comes back this week, you need to play Fields. And I see if the Lions defense, I think you just kind of need to grin and bear it in that situation. Trevor Lawrence doesn't inspire a ton of confidence right now. Now, he could do better. It's a second straight home game for Jacksonville playing Tennessee. This is a huge game for the Jaguars. It's a division game. They are officially in a race to hold off Houston for the division. So they have to play aggressive. They have to play well. But I mean, if the practice reports on Fields this week are positive, I don't think there's any conversation. I think between Fields and Lawrence, you have to play Fields, who hasn't been good this year either. But at least he runs at an elite rate. Well, he usually does. It's a tough spot for Trevor Lawrence. I mean, everything looked like it was coming together for him this offseason. They acquired Calvin Ridley last year. He had a great season throwing the ball to Christian Kirk. Uh, you've retained Evan Engram. You sign him to an extension. Zay Jones is still there. He played well for the team last year. You have what turns out to be a top 5 running back this year in Travis Etienne. I mean, what the hell's going on, man? What's up, Lawrence? I thought you were supposed to be this generational player. The best quarterback prospect we've seen since Andrew Luck. What the hell's going on? Yeah, I would play Fields, assuming that the practice reports are positive. It's tough to feel good about Trevor Lawrence right now. He won't be he won't be QB 30 again or QB 30. Was he the worst starting quarterback in the league this week? He was QB 31. I mean, he essentially was. Who the hell was worse? Tommy DeVito, maybe? I don't know. I honestly don't know. Not good company to keep. And I know the 49ers are tough. They're a tough opponent. They acquired Chase Young. Their defensive line is even stronger than it was before, and it was already really good. But I mean, you can't muster more than 200 passing yards. You're responsible for 3 turnovers. Come on, man. Need to be better. Need to be better. Not good enough. Tough to justify putting him back in your starting lineup if you've got an option like Fields. All right, let's see. What does the Dorsey firing do for James Cook? I mean, Cook looked pretty good once he got back his opportunities after he fumbled first play of the game last night. The problem is he still doesn't see red zone opportunities. But I mean, he turned 12 carries into 109 rushing yards. That's really good. Had 2 catches for 11 yards. That's whatever. And he lost a fumble on that first catch. The very first play of the game was a catch and run by James Cook that he fumbled. But 12 carries for 109 yards. I mean, I know it's the Broncos. They're not very good, but that is productive. That is a really strong line. I'm not panicking on James Cook. He is up and down. There's no doubt, but he's a guy for me that if I have him, he's probably one of my 3 best options week to week at running back, unless I'm absolutely loaded. But he's probably one of your top 3 options week over week. He's inconsistent, but he's got a really strong ceiling because of the offense that he's in. Yeah, we kind of have to keep believing in him. Um, is Dotson a must bench player? He goose egged again. I will say this. If Curtis Samuel is healthy for Washington, then yes, Jahan Dotson should not be in starting lineups. If Curtis Samuel has to miss time, has to miss a game or miss time, and I guess the same can be said for Terry McLaurin. If any of those guys miss time, then okay, Dotson has streaming appeal depending on the matchup. But if Curtis Samuel is healthy, that's Washington's wide receiver too. It's not Jahan Dotson. I know he had a couple of really good games in week 8 and 9, but Washington scored 26 points on the road against Seattle in what I thought was a really tough spot for them coming into that game. Sam Howell played pretty well. The offense did plenty fine scoring points, and Jahan Dotson had absolutely nothing to do with any of it. He was just out there doing cardio. If Curtis Samuel is healthy, that's the kicker with Jahan Dotson. If Curtis Samuel is playing in the game for the Washington Commanders, Jahan Dotson should be left on the bench. If Curtis Samuel is out, then okay, fine. We can fire up Jahan Dotson as a streaming option, depending on the matchup. Um, and then is now a good time to trade for Garrett Wilson? I'm not banking on Aaron Rodgers' return. Who returns from a torn Achilles in 4 months? Like, and I know he's not it's Aaron Rodgers we're talking about. He's not a running back that has to consistently be making cuts and moves that put a lot of stress and strain on your lower body, specifically those calf muscles and those calf and quad muscles. Specifically the calf. That's where the Achilles is, I think, or it's in his ankle, or I don't remember. It's in the lower leg. It's not like Aaron Rodgers isn't like a running back. He doesn't have to consistently be making cuts, but he is still a professional football player taking hits from 300-pound linemen every 4 or 5 plays, if not more frequently. So, I mean, is Aaron Rodgers coming back this year? Are the Jets going to be in it? Is it going to make sense for Aaron Rodgers to come back? Like, by the time he's ready, are the Jets going to be 4 games under 500 and out of the playoff race? They're not going to put him out there if that's the case. I mean, where are the Jets in the AFC playoff picture? 10th? 11th? They're behind the Dolphins and the Bills, just by virtue of records. They're behind the Chiefs and the Raiders in the AFC West. I don't know if they're behind the Chargers or the Broncos, but they all have the same record. They beat the Broncos, so they would be ahead of the Broncos. Did they play the Chargers? They did. The Chargers, I think the Chargers won that game. At least I think they did. They did. And I think that, yeah, the Chargers won that game. So they're behind the Chargers as well in the AFC West. They're behind every team in the AFC North. And they're behind 3 teams in the AFC South. The Jets are they're like in 12th or 13th place in the conference right now. All this to say, I would not be going out of my way to trade for Garrett Wilson. The numbers are there sometimes because he's that good, but Zach Wilson is bad enough to make me not want to deal with that potential headache. Like, if he's your wide receiver 3 and you feel strongly about your other wide receiver options and you can get him for your RB 3 or 4 and your top 2 options are really strong, and you've got another guy who is your RB4 currently, he'd become your RB3 if you trade that running back for Garrett Wilson. Like, all right, fine. If Wilson is your wide receiver 3 or your flex guy, okay, fine. But like, I am not super enthusiastic about acquiring Garrett Wilson. Um, this Jets offense is anemic. And I know, again, the numbers have been there for Garrett Wilson. 9 for 93, 7 for 80, 7 for 100, 8 for 90. That's his past 4 games with Zach Wilson throwing him the ball. That's really impressive stuff. I just worry because his value is back up because he's playing well. Like, can you get away with trading like your RB4 for him? Probably not. He hasn't scored a touchdown since week 2. This offense is never in the red zone. I mean, you need him to come through with 7 to 9 or 10 catches and anywhere from 75 to 100 receiving yards. And he's been doing it, to his credit. He's been doing it. I don't still want to hitch my wagon to a guy who has to rely on Zach Wilson. I, I'm not I'm not super enthusiastic about that. Xavier, I would go Mixon. Um, the Bengals are on the road for this game, aren't they? Or I think they are, which makes it a tougher spot. But I mean, Mixon's a bell cow. He played Baltimore in week 2. That was at home for Cincinnati. They weren't right yet as an offense, but he still did fine. 13 carries for 59 yards, 4 catches for 36 yards. So nearly posted 100 yards from scrimmage, chipped in 4 catches. I mean, Mixon's numbers should be there at the end of the day. You're probably not expecting a very high yards per carry, not against this Ravens offense, or excuse me, this Ravens defense. But I mean, Jerome Ford did fine. 17 for 107. Now, Cleveland's offensive line is better than Cincinnati's offensive line. Um, but I mean, Jerome Ford did fine. Kareem Hunt had 10 carries for 32 yards. Not great, but he did score a touchdown for the 5th straight week. So, Mixon, I would play Mixon on Thursday night. I would play Mixon on Thursday night. And then Greg, what's going on, man? Yeah, I would play Dobbs. I would play Dobbs over Trevor Lawrence. I had high expectations for Trevor Lawrence. So far, he has epically failed to meet those expectations. He's in a slightly better spot this week because he doesn't have to play the San Francisco 49ers. But by the numbers, the Tennessee Titans are not that much better of a matchup. Their secondary is not as strong. It's not very good. So he does have a chance. Um, he does have a chance, but he's not inspiring a ton of confidence right now with his play. Dobbs is, and he's probably getting Justin Jefferson back this week. So, yeah, yeah, I would play Dobbs. And of course, I do want to send this reminder to you guys. I will answer start sit questions on a Tuesday, but we got to remember we got to get through. And obviously, Xavier, your question pertains to the Thursday night game, because of Mixon. But keep in mind with start sit questions on Tuesday, we haven't seen practice reports yet. We haven't seen injury reports yet. We don't know what that's going to look like for most of the teams outside of Bengals Ravens. They're playing on Thursday night, so we've got some practice reports from them already. But we got to see how that shakes out as well. So I will give you an answer, but it could be kind of inaccurate by the time Thursday rolls around when I do the Thursday stream. We might have new information to work with from an injury perspective, from a practice report perspective. So just keep that in mind when you ask start sit questions on Tuesday. Um, Best to come back at least on Thursday, the Thursday stream prior to the game to confirm anything. Of course, for the Thursday night, any start sit questions that include the Thursday night game, and then of course, my Saturday stream, 6 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. That's when we'll have the most information available to us from a practice and injury report perspective. Um, and we can give a little bit more definitive answers then. But tentatively, yeah, I would say Dobbs over Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is not playing well right now. He's not playing the 49ers again, so that's good. Um, but even with a really good defense like the 49ers, you expect more from Trevor Lawrence than 180 passing yards and 3 turnovers. I know the 49ers have a lot of talent on defense, but that's not good enough. You're supposed to be a generational quarterback. There's only so many excuses we can make for Trevor Lawrence. All right, I think those are my member questions so far. So let me run back up to the top. Um, Chris, I got your question about Garrett Wilson. I know Garrett Wilson has been delivering recently. I just don't know if I want to hitch my wagon to a wide receiver that has to rely on Zach Wilson to get the job done. Zach Moss, rest of season is an RB5 or 6. That's Jonathan Taylor's backfield until further notice. Um, And yeah, if Keaton Mitchell is out, somebody might have picked him up already if you dropped him. But if he's still out there, he's worth an ad. He's worth an ad. Let's see. Your starting quarterback is Tua, but you also have Fields. Trade Purdy and Tank Dell for Pacheco. That's not a bad collection of wide receivers that you would have left over. If you need running back help, then I'm okay with it. Like, I don't know who your other running backs are, but if you need running back help, then yeah. I mean, Tank Dell's on fire right now, but Pacheco would be a worthy guy to acquire for, and give up Tank Dell. Especially if you need, I mean, I said at the top of the show, everybody always needs running back help. That's always going to be the case, no matter what. So I am, generally speaking, if it's a wide receiver for running back swap and you're getting a running back and you're giving up a wide receiver and you don't have to give up a running back yourself to make the trade, generally speaking, in a vacuum, I'm good with it because you always need running back help. Everybody does. So those other wide receivers look strong enough to make that move. If you can make it happen, I would. If I can get a running back without giving a running back up, I'm going to be interested in doing that. As long as my wide receivers are somewhat competent. Let's see. You have Tua, Goff, and Dobbs. You need to trade one. You could. I mean, you don't need all 3 of these dudes, right? I don't. This doesn't look like a super flex. I assume this is a. I assume this is not a super flex league. I mean, is there the first question here is there a person in your league who needs a quarterback? That's the first thing to do here. Is there somebody in your league that needs a quarterback? And if they do, what's a piece that you could potentially acquire from them if you gave maybe one of these quarterbacks and say Downs? Could you free up that spot, Dobbs and Downs, do a 2-for-1? Because a 1-for-1 is obviously doesn't a 1-for-1 doesn't free a spot up for you. Can you give up one of these quarterbacks? I would keep Tua. Tua is your best option here. And then trade either Goff or Dobbs along with, say, like somebody like Josh Downs for whether you could use some running back depth or some wide receiver depth. The first question, though, is who in your league needs a quarterback, if anybody? And if they do, go to that team. It's like, hey, do you want Goff and Downs? Do you want Dobbs and Downs for, you know, a wide receiver in return that gives you wide receiver depth, or a running back in return that running back that gives you some depth in return? If you have the Browns defense, just to finish up your collection of thoughts and questions, I mean, the Browns, I think, are the top defensive option rest of season. And that makes as good as they are, that makes a team like the Ravens, like a defense like the Ravens, expendable for you. Hell, trade one of those quarterbacks and the Ravens for a wide receiver or a running back. You don't need the Ravens if you have the Cleveland Browns. If you have the Cleveland Browns defense from here on out, go look at their schedule. From here on out, you don't need another defense unless something happens to Myles Garrett, which hopefully it doesn't because he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year, or he should. I would trade the Ravens defense with one of those core. If a person in your league has a need for quarterback, maybe they also are streaming defenses. I bet the Ravens, that's a noteworthy name from a defense perspective that you could also dangle out there. I would probably do that, or try to anyway. I would take Goff or Dobbs, take the Ravens defense and see what type of, you know, what type of deal you can, or what type of, what type of depth you can make happen with that. Trade Brees and Waddle for Tyreek. That would leave you with Gibbs, Jerome Ford. I would, I, I probably wouldn't. That's a lot. I mean, what happens? Who are your other running backs if something happens to either Gibbs or Jerome Ford? Like Brees Hall is a top 5 running back rest of season. Maybe top 6 or 7, but still, he's a clear-cut RB1 rest of season. Um, that's tough to let go of. If you've got other decent, I would be curious to know who the rest of your running back depth is. I guess I'm not saying definitively no. If you've got other running back options on your bench that it's like, oh yeah, I could turn to these guys and if I need to, then we can revisit it. But Brees and Waddle is a lot. But if you've got other running backs that you can lean on, then I don't hate it as much. But that's something that I would want to know. Is it weird to have Tank Dell and Noah Brown? No. No. I mean, I want wide receivers who are catching the ball from a quarterback who's playing really well. And I don't know that there's too many quarterbacks playing better right now than CJ Stroud. How many quarterbacks right now are playing better than CJ Stroud? Whether you want to talk about it from a fantasy or just a straight up NFL perspective. How many are playing better than CJ Stroud? 3 or 4? Like, that's it. That's it. Stroud is playing lights out right now. And they're not great at running the ball. Devin Singletary had a nice game this past Sunday against the Bengals, but on the whole, they don't run the ball all that great. And their defense is still giving up a decent amount of points, which means Houston needs to stay aggressive throwing the ball. And I don't think, they have every incentive to be aggressive throwing the ball because of how good CJ Stroud is playing right now. So, no, it's not weird. It's not weird. I think it's fine. You want receivers attached to good quarterbacks. I don't care if they're on the same team or not. Just keep in mind with somebody like Noah Brown, once Nico Collins comes back, Brown goes back to being, a bench stash. Generally speaking, blanket statement, you want players attached to good quarterbacks. That's why I'm so like, despite how well he's playing right now in this past 4-game stretch, like that's why I'm a little cautious about like the idea of acquiring somebody like Garrett Wilson. He's not attached to a good quarterback. He's attached to a bad quarterback. And he's elite. He's awesome. Garrett Wilson is. But I mean, when does that luck run out? When does he have a potential Devontae Adams stretch over the past couple of weeks where the numbers are not there because he's suffering from poor quarterback play? It's way more conceivable that it happens to somebody like Garrett Wilson than it does to a lesser receiver who's not as individually talented as Garrett Wilson, but he is attached to a much better quarterback. You want guys attached to good quarterbacks. Point blank. And would I trade Devontae Smith and Walker for Tyreek? I like that one better than Brees and Waddle. I like that one better than Brees and Waddle. Like, yes, Brees is also in that bad Jets offense, but all Zach Wilson has to do is just turn around and hand the ball off to him. It's not as complicated. Oh, that's two separate. It's two separate. Okay. Devontae and Walker for Tyreek. Yeah, I mean, without knowing who your other wide receivers or running backs are, I mean, I think I'm okay with that one a little bit more than the Brees and Waddle one. I think I prefer Brees to Walker. Waddle and Smith are kind of a push. But for me, that one's a little bit more palatable because personally, I prefer Brees to Walker. And yeah, again, if you have the Browns defense, I'd be looking to move one of those quarterbacks along with the Ravens defense for whatever running back or wide receiver depth you can get. That's what I would be looking to do. If you have the Browns defense, you just start them rest of the season. You don't think twice about it. And you don't need to hold another defense. That's how good the Browns are. You sink or swim with them. You have Madison. Is he worth dropping for Chandler or Singletary? What's his injury status? He has not been good, so I'm inclined to say yes if you need the running back depth. Still in concussion protocol. I mean, can you not stash Madison in an IR spot? Is there no IR spot that you can put him in? I don't know that I want to necessarily cut him outright. There's construction happening in my building right now. I don't know if there's any vibrations happening that y'all can hear or anything like that, but hopefully not. I don't wanna cut Madison outright. The numbers haven't been good, but at the end of the day, the production has been there a little bit more often than not. I don't wanna cut him outright. Um, and then but, Chandler is an interesting option. He'll get the spot start. Singletary, I guess that just depends on what the status is of Damian Pierce, which we don't know right now, at least last I checked. I mean, the last update we have for Damian Pierce is that he just wasn't going to play this past week. We're not going to know. We're not going to have an update on him until tomorrow, most likely, when the Texans begin practicing for this week. That being said, it seems like Pierce is just not as good of a fit for this offense as Singletary is, and they have the Cardinals at home. So I will say this. I really don't want to I don't want to cut Madison, but I do want to add Singletary. I do want to add Singletary. What's going on, Jay? If you have Madison, I don't really want to cut him outright, but I do want to add Singletary. He gets if he gets another start and Damian Pierce is out another week, he gets Arizona at home. That is a juicy matchup. Cardinals are giving up tons of production to running backs this year. Um, and Randy, just to finish your thought on that Brees trade, you have Keaton Mitchell, who's an interesting stash, but he's he's all or nothing at this point. He's going to be he's not yet in that conversation where it's just like he's locked into your lineup each week. We're not there yet. Um, and Chuba is not that good. I have a hard time saying yes to this. Like Gibbs and Jerome Ford are a strong enough top two, but then you're talking about some random flyers if anything happens to Gibbs or Jerome Ford without Brees. Yeah, I have a tough time pulling the trigger on that one. I know Brees has been kind of quiet the past couple of weeks. He got 16 touches against Vegas. Turned it into 75 scrimmage yards. And then 20 touches against the Chargers in week 9, only 60 scrimmage yards, but he did get the work. I mean, I still think Brees's ceiling is pretty strong. And there's some decent matchups coming up on his schedule. The one matchup you worry about with Brees is week 17, championship week on the road against Cleveland, but we got to get there first. Every other matchup between now and then for Brees is not a super intimidating one. He's got the Bills this coming week. He killed them week 1 on limited touches. He's got the Dolphins at home. He's got the Falcons at home. He's got Houston at home weeks 12 to 14. He should be fine there. Again on the road in Miami week 15. That might be a little bit of a tough spot if the Jets have a tough time keeping pace with the Dolphins. But then he's got Washington week 16. If you're able to make the semifinals, that's a great spot. Yeah, I have a tough time parting with Brees. Despite a past quiet couple of weeks, I'd still say he's an easy top 8 running back for the rest of the year. Well, so I have some pause with that one. If you're comfortable with it, that's all that matters. Like if the trade is out there and if the trade is like pending and the other person has accepted and you can make it happen, and you want to do it, then by all means, don't let me stop you. I have some pause on that one because of Brees. That's all. Um, Jay, should you start Gus or Javante over Pollard? And what's going on, Iron? Um, no, I wouldn't start. I would start Javante Williams, but I don't think I would start Gus on a short week against Cincinnati. Um, how did Gus do against Cleveland? I'm actually not sure. Did he score a touchdown? He did. He got one. 11 for 24 and a touchdown and 1 4-yard catch. That's a tough matchup, but he still came through. Um, Pollard is down to his last chance this week. If he can't do it against Carolina, which is a spectacular matchup for opposing running backs, if Tony Pollard can't do it against Carolina, then we can declare him a lost cause, outright for the 2023 season. You have to fire up Pollard for one more week against the Carolina Panthers. If he can't do it against them, then you can start having this conversation of Gus Edwards or Tony Pollard. But for one more week, I think you got to play Pollard in this matchup against Carolina. If he can't do it against them, then you can bench him. But I think you got to go with him this week in a great matchup against the Panthers. Yeah, I think you got to go Pollard one more week. Yeah. The case with Tony Pollard is wildly confusing. I mean, it's like they're just not using him the way that they did last year. And he hasn't been as good, hasn't been as effective. And Iron, did you pull that? You did make that trade for Ferguson. That's fine. I mean, yeah, you need pieces. You need some help. He's been good. He's stepped right into that role. So I think you're fine there. Yeah, no, I think that's a good move. If you're contending, late seconds need to be, if you're a contender in Dynasty, something like a late second round pick it should be an easy asset to move for something that can help you now. You know. And Warren will be the starting running back. Apparently, that was an update that was handed or that came down today. Warren looks like the better player, but Najee has been he himself has been better the past couple of weeks. I think he had like 80 yards and a score against the Packers. Now, the Packers give up production to every running back, but for whatever it's worth, Najee is now the change of pace guy, I guess. Warren is the starter. I guess he'll see 55% of the snaps and opportunities or something to that effect. And Harris will mix in for 45% of the opportunities. And it's going to just remain a gross backfield. I mean, in good matchups, you can start either one, if not both of them. But yes, it remains a little unpredictable what's going to happen with Najee Harris any given week. Like on the road against Cleveland, that one's if he's like now the backup, that's a tough pill to swallow on the road against Cleveland. But you might not have a better option. You might not have a better alternative. So we just gotta that's a true wait and see because it's been a split backfield sort of in Najee's favor for most of the season. I mean, how much does Warren take over? If Najee is still getting 48, 50, 52% of the snaps and 45-ish percent of the opportunities, it's not too different from what he was already doing. So we got to see what that one is one that we got to wait and see what the vibes are throughout this week. Before we make any calls about which Steelers running back to fire up in a brutal matchup. So we'll see. Let's see. And then real quick, Jay, I got your trade question, and then I will move back up to the top. Yep, appreciate everybody's patience. I do get to the members first. I will bounce back up to the top. That is a member perk. Getting questions. Your questions jump the line, but I will get to everybody. Pollard and one of the either Pittman, Olave, or Smith for a top wide receiver. So what, like Tyreek? I mean, I don't want Tony Pollard right now. I can tell you that much. It might be. You can float it out there. You can try Pollard and Devontae Smith for I don't know who you're trying to go for. Diggs, if you're trying to buy low on Diggs, he's had a couple quiet weeks. You're not buying low on AJ Brown. Like I would never say yes to that if I had AJ Brown. I don't want Tony Pollard. If I have Tyreek Hill, I mean, unless my running backs are absolutely decimated either from injury or poor performance, you have Tyreek and Waddle. Yeah, I mean, then what top wide receiver? You already have the top wide receiver. I don't know if you necessarily need another one. I mean, you can try. I'm just telling you right now, I don't really want Tony Pollard. I don't even know if I want Tony Pollard right now at a discount. Whatever that looks like. He has not been good. He has not come anywhere close to the expectations that people had for him coming into this season. Yeah, I mean, you can try. You can try. If the trade deadline is next week and not this week, you might almost want to hold out that Pollard has a really strong game against Carolina and then gets a little bit of value back. I mean, if you're just trying to get rid of him, maybe that's a selling point. Hey, he's playing Carolina this week. They suck. Here you go. Pollard should do well this week. You could try that. I mean, sure, make the round, see if anybody wants him. I can tell you right now, I would need him at a discount to be interested, which means you're probably not going to want to do that. What happened to my video? There we go. Sorry about that. I don't know what that was all about. Things must be shaking in my apartment. They're doing some type of construction somewhere. I don't know. There's drilling a lot. It's really annoying. All right, let's move things back up to the top. I'm at Antonio's question. You can only start one of a Cooper or Kyron Williams when he comes back, assuming he has retained the job. Do you trade those two for Bijan? Yeah, in full PPR? Yeah, you could do that. I mean, Cooper has been really good since Deshaun Watson came back. Bijan is an insane talent, but he plays in a terribly frustrating offense. And Kyron Williams, I mean, we'll see what happens there, but he's at the very least, he's decent running back depth. I would need to know who your other running backs are. I wouldn't drop Smith and Jigba. I'm personally not giving up on him. I think he's too talented and his opportunity is only one play away. Without knowing your other running backs, I think I ultimately say no. In full PPR, Cooper is really good with Deshaun Watson back and presumably healthy from the shoulder injury. And Bijan is awesome, but Bijan plays for the Falcons, who are the opposite of awesome. They did give him 22 carries this past week, but still, it probably wasn't enough. If they had given him a few more, maybe they win that game. Yeah, the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm not feeling it. The more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm not feeling that trade. You have Brees and Swift. No. I would say no. Maximize your opportunities. I know that one of these dudes is going to have to sit on your bench in a playoff game, but I'd rather have. I think Cooper is actually maybe the top player in this trade, and you'd be trading the best player in this trade plus another piece for a lesser player in the deal. So for me, no. I would hold Cooper and Kyron. Bijan is great. Having him on your roster will make you want to pull your hair out because the Falcons love to give the ball to Tyler Algier as much as they do. And they have no quarterback, so they're a terrible offense. So I'm not really feeling that one. And I would hold Smith and Jigba. Unless you are in desperate need of a Rashee Rice is a guy that you can plug in now, but Smith and Jigba is a guy that I want to continue to stash for the potential upside. But that's just me. If you are in need of a start this week, then sure, grab Rashee Rice. But I'd rather hold Smith and Jigba if I can get away with it. Let's see. You were offered Tyreek for ETN, Ayuk, and Hawkinson. No, that's too much. No. Nope. No. No, that's too much. That's too much. ETN is a top 7 running back rest of season. Ayuk is a top 15 wide receiver rest of season, maybe even higher than that. And Hawkinson is like the tight end 2 or 3 on the no. I know Tyreek Hill is the man. He's awesome, but for 3 elite, like not elite, I don't want to just toss that word around too loosely. For 3 upper echelon really strong players, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No. No. Keep your pieces. Keep your pieces. That's too much. That's way too much. No chance. No chance for me. Keep your guys. Let's see. You have Tua and Kyler. You got offered Jerome Ford for Kyler. Yeah, I would do this because you have Tua. coming back after his bye week. Kyler still has his bye week. Kyler is also way more likely than Tua to put. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but it could happen. Kyler could still end up getting shut down before the end of the season. Um, if the Cardinals are ultimately not playing for anything, Kyler could still get. There's no guarantees that Kyler is playing in weeks 16, 17, and 18. Tua, there is. The Dolphins are playing for something this year. The Cardinals, that's way more volatile. Yes, I would do that trade. I would do that trade. You need the running back help, and that is the best guy that you can get. Um, I would do that trade because I assume that there is a random. It's way more likely that a random quarterback emerges on waivers that if you need in a pinch over a running back. So yeah, I would do that. I would do that. Yeah. If you need the running back help and you have an expendable quarterback, the answer for me is yes. Get the running back. Yes. Because now you can plug Tua in for the rest of the season. He's done. Um, as far as like his bye week is over, you can just fire him up each week and forget about it. So, yes, I would trade Kyler, who is way more volatile. We can't sit here and definitively say that he's going to play every week for the rest of the season. Let's see. First of all, yes to dropping Taysom Hill for Jalen Moore. If Warren is out there, then absolutely pick him up 100%. Um, I'd rather have 7 running backs, and I don't play 4 of them ever, but they're good options to have just in case, than a backup tight end, especially when you have Kelsey. I'm not worried about Travis Kelsey. Um, that's one dude where you just fire him up. And if he does Travis Kelsey things, then great. That's what we drafted him for. If he doesn't meet expectations, you struck out with the best possible option. It's hard to feel bad about that. Um, so yes, drop Taysom for Warren. 100%. I'm not worried about the fact you have Najee. I'll take both of those guys on the same roster. That's fine with me. Um, and then as far as backup quarterback, is that Justin Herbert? I see no reason to worry about a backup quarterback if you have Justin Herbert. He's putting up the numbers, and the defense still stinks, which means that they have to stay aggressive throwing the ball. Yeah, I would not worry about a back. If I have Justin Herbert, I'm not worried about a backup quarterback. He's got Keenan Allen. He's got Austin Eckler. Like, that's it. That's the end of my statement. Those are two of the elite playmakers at their positions. I mean, he's having a great season. He had a bad week in week 9 against the Jets, but also he didn't need to do anything that week. They won the game 27-6. Yeah, I would not worry about. You're playing Justin Herbert each week, and that's that. Plus, I mean, week 15 against Vegas, week 16 home against Buffalo, week 17 against Denver in the fantasy playoffs. If you can make it, Herbert's got some strong matchups. I wouldn't be too worried about him. Yeah, I'm not worried about Kelsey, and I'm not worried about Herbert. I am I am living and dying with those two guys as my only options at quarterback and tight end rest of season. And yes, drop Taysom Hill for Jalen Warren, 100%. Randy, I see your thoughts here. If that's your mindset, then pull the trigger, man. If you're, I if you're playing for the ceiling and you're not worried about what could happen to your other running backs, then and it's like I'm getting the best player in the deal and that's that, then do it. Make the trade. Yeah, always go with your gut. If you're sitting here thinking, "Well, I'm playing for the potential ceiling," which is a good, smart, aggressive way to play, then do it. Yeah, make the trade. I like having 3 or 4 running backs personally. Like if I have 4 top 20 options at running back and I know I have to sit one each week because it's 2 running backs and a flex, then so be it. That's me though. That's me personally. But not everybody cares as much about a guy that's on the bench. You want guys that are if you can get the best wide receiver in football, do it. Do it. Make it happen. Sorry to see about some of these high scores even though yeah, that's the annoying luck of the draw when it comes to head to head, traditional head to head. Um We've all been there. We've all been there where we've put up strong weeks only to get derailed by the best score of the week. We've all been there where we've lost by less than a point, regardless of the final score. I mean, yeah, it's a cruel game we play. Um, Drop Judy for Brandon Cooks. I would rather get Ty Chandler than Brandon Cooks. And I know Cooks had a good game against the Giants, but Ty Chandler might start this week for the Vikings if Alexander Madison doesn't clear concussion protocol, which as of yesterday, he hasn't. Who the Vikings get this week? Oh, man, they're on the road against Denver. Denver loves giving up points to running backs. Yeah. If you want to drop Judy, that's fine. Um, Pick up Ty Chandler. God damn, man. I thought Judy was going to be good. I don't know what that's all about. I guess he's just not as advertised. And it's not like you can blame Russ. Last year you could blame Russ and Judy picked up a couple of injuries last year. Last year and you could blame Russ because Russ played he was piss poor last year, but Russ has been better this year. Like 3 catches for 35 yards. Like what the hell, Judy? Yeah, you can drop him and I would pick up Ty Chandler because he might start this week in a great matchup. Yeah, I would pick up Ty Chandler. He's a potential spot start this week against Denver. If Madison doesn't play, Ty Chandler is an RB2. If Madison doesn't play, Ty Chandler is an RB2 that you need to find a way to get into your lineup. So I would want to add him. All right, just jumping down. Yeah, appreciate everybody's patience. I do get to every question, but one of the perks of being a member is your questions jump the line. So I know it looks like I'm jumping around. I do get to everybody. Appreciate everybody's patience. Um, I got to Jay's question. I did get to the member questions down here. I think I'm at the question that includes these tight ends. Um Fryermuth, Higby, Conklin. Oh, okay. Yeah, for this week. I kind of like Conklin. I kind of like Conklin. He had 7 more catches this past week. Um, Feels like he's a favorite target of Zach Wilson more so than like an Alan Lazard. Man, talk about a forgettable season for that guy. Uh, Conklin is like regularly involved. What's the stat I saw about him? I think this was from Fantasy Points. Um, Conklin is the tight end 13 in scoring right now. If you take away weeks 1 and 8, this is from Fantasy Points. This is not my data. Conklin is the tight end 13 in scoring, even though he hasn't scored a touchdown yet. I think he's a top 10 option this week. He's got 13 catches the past 2 weeks. He's got 136 receiving yards the past 2 weeks. And then who do the Jets have this week? It's not, if I'm remembering correctly, it's not an overly concerning matchup. Yeah, against Buffalo. He did nothing against Buffalo week 1, the first week of the season, but that was, of course, the game where Aaron Rodgers was lost to the torn Achilles and the offense was sent into upheaval because they had to pivot to Zach Wilson right away. Ever since then, Conklin's got 5 catches, 3 catches, 4 catches, 4 catches, 3 catches. He didn't catch a ball week 8 on 2 targets, and then last couple of weeks, 6 catches, 7 catches. I would go Conklin. He's been pretty steady. Yeah, I would go Conklin. And I see now, Antonio, your other running backs are Brees and Swift. Yeah, I would still not. Yeah. Oh, so because you have Brees and Swift, I would not make that trade. I would keep Cooper and Kyron. I would keep those guys. I would not make the trade to get B John, especially in full PPR. I'm keeping Amari Cooper. Is it time to drop Ridley? Man, it's not inconceivable. Talk about disappointing. Talk about like completely failing to meet any type of modest expectations this year. Um, you can't trade him. You can't trade him. Like who's gonna give you, like, what are you possibly getting? This is a rock bottom sell low if you're trying to sell Calvin Ridley. I just don't want to do that. I would want to know, like, who is a potential option for you to get for Calvin Ridley. It's not going to be anybody spectacular, I can tell you that. And then if you're dropping him, who are you dropping him for? Who are the guys on the wire that you're looking at where you could conceivably say to yourself, yeah, I want to drop Calvin Ridley for this guy? I'm not saying that it's not possible, just genuinely asking, who are the options on the wire? He certainly can't be considered for your starting lineup, although that's been the case for a little while now. But I would not trade Calvin Ridley. You're not going to get anything for him. Again, this could hurt me, like, to a fault. My thought process is just like, I don't want to sell a dude when he's at his lowest, because what if he does better? There's nowhere right now for Calvin Ridley. There's nowhere to go but up. I guess you could stay where you're at, but it's not going to get worse. To that point, though, you're not going to get anything good in an offer. So I just don't really want to. I don't really want to trade him because I'm going to get crap for him. But depending on who's on the wire, we can have a conversation about that. Who to potentially pick up. at the expense of dropping Calvin Ridley. I can't believe this is where we're at, but it is where we are at. He climbed into the second round of drafts this year. He was a for most of the summer in best ball, he was a third round pick, middle third round pick, and then the hype started and he became a late second round pick. Um, over guys like Mark Andrews, Amari Cooper. Who else was going at the turn around that time? Well, T. Higgins. So that six in one hand, half a dozen in the other. Tank Dell still on the wire? Oh shit. Well, then there you go. Yeah, okay. I would because if somebody came to me right now and said I'll trade you Tank Dell for Calvin Ridley, I think I would probably say yes. I was thinking even worse. Like even worse options were yeah, I would yes. Holy hell. Is that where we're at? Are we dropping Calvin Ridley to add Tank Dell? I think we are. I think we are. I don't care how healthy Nico Collins is for the Texans. CJ Stroud is throwing the shit out of the football right now. He looks unbelievable. I want wide receivers attached to a quarterback like that. Yeah, I think that's where we're at. I would rather have Tank Dell on my team than Calvin Ridley. Yep, that's where we're at. Holy hell. It's funny what comes out of your mouth mid-season as opposed to what you were thinking during the season or during the offseason. During the offseason, Calvin Ridley was a top 30 pick. Tank Dell was outside the top 180. It's funny how things play out. Speaking of Tank Dell, do you trade him for Kyler? Um, this gives me pause. I know you say you like your quarter or you like your wide receivers. Um, I don't like trading for quarterbacks. I don't like acquiring quarterbacks in one quarterback leagues. I'd rather just scour the waiver wire week to week. My other concern with Kyler is I am not convinced that he plays every week the rest of this season. The Cardinals got a shot in the arm with him returning. They're still 2-8. Like they're still not going anywhere this year. They just beat the Falcons, who also suck. I mean, good for them, good for the Cardinals, good for Kyler. It was great to see him back out there. He's electric as a playmaker and as a quarterback. But this is still a Cardinals team that is going nowhere this year. I'm not convinced that we see Kyler Murray in week 16, week 17, week 18. Hopefully, your fantasy championship isn't in week 18, but if it is, this is not a team that's going to the playoffs. Who's to say that Kyler Murray plays those weeks? There's still a chance that Kyler is out there right now to get his trade value up. And because the Cardinals are paying him a ton of money. But they might look at the writing on the wall in a few weeks and say to themselves, we're actually probably going into 2024 with Kyler as our quarterback. I'm not guaranteeing that happens, but if they play themselves out of the Caleb Williams, Drake May sweepstakes, they may look at that situation and think to themselves, we're actually not going to trade Kyler because he's our best option going into 2024. So we're just going to keep him, but we're also going to protect him in a lost season. Therefore, we're not going to put him out there in meaningless games for us. I have a lot of pause acquiring Kyler Murray in redraft, especially in one quarterback leagues for any type of wide receiver or running back depth. I can see him sticking around, but to that point, I don't know if he plays in meaningless games at the end of the season. It's totally possible Arizona looks at the whole picture 3 weeks from now when they're 3-11 or whatever. Maybe they win one more game. I don't know what their schedule is off the top of my head. I can look at it right now. I mean, next week they play Houston on the road. Tough spot. Then they play the Rams at home. I guess they could win that game. Then they're on the road against Pittsburgh. They're probably not going to win that game. And then it's their bye week. And then they've got the 49ers, the Bears, the Eagles, and the Seahawks to end the season. There's 2 wins tops for the Cardinals for the rest of the season. Maybe 3 if they can catch Houston sleeping. Because Houston's the talk of the town right now, but they're still a very young team that is blowing expectations out of the water. Maybe Kyler catches them sleepwalking. Maybe he can beat the Rams at home. Maybe he can beat the Bears on the road. Other than that, I see 4 L's for sure. Pittsburgh, 49ers, Eagles, Seahawks. I just don't know that Kyler is playing in those games, week 16, week 17, week 18. I just am not sure. So I have a lot of pause acquiring. I'll just wait for another random quarterback to emerge on the waiver wire. And if I feel like I need a QB2, then I'll get him then. Like you have Howell. Sam Howell scored 30 points this past week. I'll just keep firing him up. And I'll keep Tank Dell. That's my thought process here. Better rest of season, Javonte, Achane, or Pollard? Well, not Pollard. Holy hell. Talk about failing to meet expectations of any kind. I mean, the ceiling here is Achane. The ceiling here is Achane. It's a limited sample size, and we haven't seen it for over a month, but Devon Achane looked like the truth back in weeks 3, 4, 5, and 6, whatever it was. Maybe not week 6. I think he got hurt after week 5. I mean, limited sample size, but this dude has some serious pop. He has to stay healthy, which already has an IR stint to his credit. But the guy with all upside here is Achane. Pollard is third. And if he can't get it going this weekend against the Carolina Panthers, then stick a fork in him. I would say Achane, then Javonte, then Pollard. Like Javonte is back. He has rounded into form. He looks back from the injury. The Broncos offense is better than it was last year. And he's a big reason why. A healthy Javonte Williams. But Achane is the ceiling guy here. Achane is the ceiling guy here. Pollard is third. The dude, he has failed to meet any expectation whatsoever this year. Yeah. Achane, then Javonte, then Pollard. I don't think this is a fluky run for the Broncos. I mean, it could be from the perspective of they're not real contenders, but this offense is playing much better than they were last year, and Javonte Williams is a big reason why. But I'll put him second because Achane is the all upside guy here for me. Iron, I don't want to drop Gus for Keaton Mitchell, but I mean, who's one of those? Could you drop Dulcich? You have Dulcich, right? Just get rid of him. Just get rid of him. But I would want to keep Gus. I want both. I want both of them. But I don't want to drop Gus. It's another league. Let me know who your other drop candidates are. Um, all right, it's one man keeper league, so you can only keep one guy. Trade Eckler for Smith and Jigba, Mixon, and a couple of draft picks. Are you out of it? Are you not contending this year? Because if you can only keep one keeper, I guess Smith and Jigba is your potential keeper here. You're not going to want to keep Mixon next year, I assume. I mean, maybe you will, but I would assume based on price, he's a little expensive. I mean, are you done? Is your team out of it? Because Eckler is the guy that helps you compete now this year, obviously. If you're out of it, I mean, if you're out of it, then sure, get a decent return for a guy who you can't keep next year and doesn't help you for the rest of this year. So get pieces that you think will set you up better next year. But if you're content, if you are like still potentially in it and you're trying to hedge, like, oh, I'm gonna try to stay competitive, but I'm gonna give up Eckler for a package, then I would not do that. Always play for the win if you can. Yeah, I would not want to trade. If you are out of it, then fine. If you are still a potential to make the playoffs, like if you could still conceivably make the playoffs and your team is competitive enough to make the playoffs, then no, I would just keep Eckler and I'll worry about keepers in the offseason. I treat keeper like redraft way more than I treat like keeper is not dynasty for me. Keeper is just like an expanded form of redraft. Always go for the win. Unless you're 1-9 or 2-8 and you're just like, this wasn't my year. I didn't build a good team. Too much bad stuff happened, injuries, poor performances, whatever, and I'm just getting what I can. But if it's not that, then my answer is no. I wouldn't drop Dobbs, Iron. Even in one quarterback, I mean, you want to keep that. You want to have that insurance policy in case anything happens to Hurts. Hopefully not, but I would want to keep that insurance policy. And I mean, as far as the Kyler question, putting Clayton Tune back out there, I can easily put him back out there if I am intentionally trying to tank to maximize how good my draft pick is. The Cardinals aren't playing for shit this year. I know he was bad. I'll throw him back out there for 3 more games and 3 more guaranteed losses if I ultimately determine that that's the best course of the direction of the franchise moving forward. How do I go back to Clayton Tune? Easily. I'm trying to lose. I don't care about these last 3 or 4 meaningless games of my season. That's how I do it. I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen. I just have some concern about Kyler rest of season. Like, he might be totally healthy, but I could still see the Cardinals saying, yeah, all right, screw it. We've seen enough. We're getting ready for 2024. Take these last few weeks off and we'll see you next season. I could see that happening. Maybe they don't do it because Jonathan Gannon is trying to, make his case for a second year as the head coach, and they want to build some momentum for next year or whatever. That's all well and good. You could do that, but you're also talking about a quarterback who's coming back after 10 months absence from a torn ACL. I mean, you want to be smart about this. Whether he's your future or you're trying to trade him for somebody else's future, you need to protect the guy in some way, shape, or form. And in a lost season, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. That eventually they pull the plug on Kyler, which is why I have some pause acquiring him. Superflex, yeah, okay, fine. One quarterback, eh. Yeah, Iron, you got to have some other pieces that you could drop, or at least one or two other guys. But those names are guys that you can't drop. Could you trade Pierce for? You're not going to get a second round pick for him at this point. That's probably not happening. Eckler for Debo, Walker, and Pittman. If I'm getting Debo, Walker, and Pittman, then hell yeah. If I'm getting Eckler, then I'm giving up way too much. Yeah. If I can turn Austin Eckler into Michael Pittman, Kenneth Walker, and Debo Samuel, I'm doing that. If I need to give up Pittman, Walker, and Debo to acquire Eckler, there's no way. There's no way. I give up the best player, but I get three really good players. Yeah. I have to give up three really good players to get the best player. No. No. So I'm not sure which side you're on of this trade, but Debo, Walker, Pittman for me, and it's not close. Eckler's the best player in this deal, but it's not like it's two really good players and a scrub. These are three really good players. I want the three really good players. Oh, it's redraft iron. Oh. Oh. Yeah. Okay. You could drop Dobbs. I assume you're playing Dynasty over there. Yeah. If it's redraft, then yeah, you can drop Dobbs. You can drop Dobbs is a drop in one quarterback if you've got a guy like Jalen Hurts coming back this week. So yeah, you can drop Dobbs. That's fine. We're at the end of the chat, so I will be shutting this down here in the next couple of minutes. Appreciate you guys coming in, hanging out, talking shop today. Um, if you want to keep the conversation going, you can join my Discord. Second link in the description of this live stream and all the videos on this channel. I will be live again 6 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, ahead of Thursday Night Football between the Bengals and the Ravens. So be sure to tune in, especially if you've got guys in that game and you want to talk through some start sit options. And then, of course, I will be live on Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern for start sit help. That will be the only start sit help of the weekend. I will be traveling on Sunday for the holidays. I will not have a ton of availability next week, but you can hit me in Discord if you've got any questions that you want to talk through. Just FYI, I will be traveling and a little out of pocket for the holidays next week. But I'm around Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern before the game, and then Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern, exclusive start sit help ahead of the week 11 games. We'll get you taken care of prior to those games. Just want to throw that out before I shut this down. You've Dobbs, Downs, Pickens, Flowers, Watson, Gus, Pierce. I would drop Dobbs, Iron. If it's one quarterback and you have Jalen Hurts, I would drop Dobbs. I would drop Dobbs. And then trade away Swift and Brees for Jamar Chase. Who are your other wide receivers? And is it full PPR? If you've got if you have a need at wide receiver and it's full PPR, then I'm okay with that. Puka and if that is on the table, then I would take it. Or I'll take if if that is on the table for you to accept and you get Jamar Chase. Yes, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I would do that. I would do that trade. Swift and Brees for Chase. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'd probably rather give up I would maybe see if I can give up Henry instead and try to go off the name recognition. I would maybe come back and say, "Hey, would you do Henry?" and Swift. But if they say no, it's got to be Brees, then I would still ultimately say yes. Just try to haggle a little bit. See if you can do it for Derrick Henry instead of Brees, or even Derrick Henry instead of Swift. To be honest, see if they would do Derrick Henry instead of one of those two names. But if they say no, it has to be Brees and Swift. I would still say, okay, yeah, I'll do the trade. Trade Barkley or Walker for Cup? Absolutely. If you can move off of Saquon, I would be looking to do it. We're down to Tommy DeVito. I guess what is Tyrod Taylor going to come back? He's on IR, so he's probably going to miss what, at least two more games. I mean, Saquon's out there fighting for his life. Um, Bad offense. The Giants are going nowhere for the rest of this year. Uh Tyrod. What is his available? Is he I think he's on IR. Does not expect to miss the rest of the season, so I guess that's good. Uh he's going to miss week 11 and 12 guaranteed. And then the Giants have a week 13 bye. So maybe Tyrod is able to come back week 14. So just in time for, well, just before the playoffs, I guess. I just I am incredibly worried about Saquon rest of season. If you've got McCaffrey, Achan, and Walker, that is good enough for me to feel like I can hang my hat on rest of season. I am okay moving off of Saquon if it's for somebody like Cup. I know Cup has been quiet the past couple of weeks and he's older, and the Rams are also not that good, but they're better than the Giants. And Matthew Stafford is apparently back this week from his injury. And if you could use the wide receiver help, especially because you have Higgins, yeah, I would probably do this trade. Saquon is a major, major concern for me for the rest of the season because of the makeup of the Giants offense. They're down to their third string quarterback for at least the next 2 weeks. Then they've got the week 13 bye. Maybe Tyrod Taylor is back for week 14. He does present an upgrade over Tommy DeVito. I keep calling him Danny DeVito. Um, but this is a Giants team that, like, if relegation existed in the NFL, the Giants would be the candidate this year. They are terrible. So, yes, I would do that trade. I would look to unload Saquon, and if I get a guy like Cooper Kupp, I'm fine with that return. Yeah, I would do that. Christian Watson or Calvin Ridley this week? Yikes. Neither. Um, I mean, Watson has who do the Packers have? I really don't feel good about either one. Okay, that trade did happen. You had Eckler. You acquired Debo, Walker, and Pittman. So you got the package. Okay. That's a win. I mean, I don't care how you slice it. When you get three really good when you take a great player and turn him into three really good players, that's a win. That's a win. Yeah, nicely done. It's hard to trade a guy like Eckler, but when you can get three players of that caliber, you do it. You do it. You do it every time. So yeah, nicely done. Good collection of talent. Uh, Puka or Tank Dell? Puka, but we gotta see injury reports first. We gotta see practice reports first with both of these teams. Is Nico Collins back for Houston? Is Matthew Stafford limited in practice this week? Or is Puka limited in practice this week? He was on the injury report for a couple of weeks there prior to the bye week. We got to see practice reports. I would tentatively say Puka, but we got to see, yeah, is Nico back for Houston? Um, yeah, is Stafford practicing in full for the Rams? Is Cup practicing in full for the Rams? Is Puka practicing in full for the Rams? We got to see injury and a definitive call. I would say Puka in a vacuum, but yeah, keep Tyler Bass for a couple more weeks. I know that last night was bad. I think the week before he didn't do much either, but look, he is still attached to a Josh Allen led offense. And yes, Josh Allen is under a lot of scrutiny today, and rightfully so. He's turning the ball over a ton, and the Bills are not playing well. But this is still a good offense. This is still a good offense that still scores the ball in bunches. They are easily still a top 10 offense on the season. They've got the Jets next week at home. That's a revenge game for the Bills after what happened in week 1 of the season. You would think that you know, this is a spot where they're looking to get some payback. And the Jets defense is good enough. Tyler Bass could be kicking some 40-yard field goals here and there. It only takes a couple of those for him to turn in a kicker one performance on the week. I would hold Bass, and then the very next week they get the Eagles on the road. So could be high scoring affair in that game. I would hold Bass until his bye week. It's a week 13 bye. You can rock with Bass for 2 more weeks, see how he does, and then you can if it's 2 more bad performances or lackluster performances, then you can drop him on his bye week when we're going to cut him anyway. I would hang on to him. Um, Grupp or Gruppy, that New Orleans kicker. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Sorry, apologies. They're on bye this week anyway, so you can't use him. And Zerline, I have a difficult time trusting the Jets offense. They are not in scoring position that much. And that is advantageous for a kicker, but it's like pulling teeth getting your team into scoring position. It's like, yeah, I don't feel as good about that. Give me Bass. He's attached to the best quarterback of this bunch by far. I'll take my chances there. I'll take my chances there. So, yep, no problem. Happy to help. Going to be shutting this down here shortly. Good couple hours hanging out with you guys. Appreciate all the engagement and the conversation. Appreciate the likes. I do always just ask, if anything else, if you enjoy the conversation, the dialogue, the engagement, to just like the stream. That helps me for the engagement purposes. Um, We'll be back Thursday prior to Thursday Night Football between the Bengals and the Ravens, 6 p.m. Eastern, so we can finalize any start-sit questions there that pertain to the Thursday night game. If you have players either on the Bengals or the Ravens, if not both, we'll talk shop then. And, of course, Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern, start, sit, help. Be sure to tune in. We'll finalize anything for the Sunday slate at that time. But that'll do it for me tonight. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for coming in and hanging out. Everybody have a great rest of your evening, and I will see you guys on Thursday. Thanks, everybody.